suppose I want to start by, yes, so just saying how much of a privilege it is to have you both on here and having the time to talk about things. Yeah, thank you so much for giving up your time to talk things through. I think we said broadly speaking, yeah, we talk about the person-centered approach in different contexts, but I'm happy for us to kind of go in a, I don't know, in a generally broad kind of way, just around whatever we want to, really. Um, Do we want to start with you both briefly introducing yourself, just in case anyone watching, doesn't know who you are, and yeah, we'll go from there if that's all right. Who would like to go first?
Oh, you've handed the baton to me there, Jan.
Yes, I have.
Thank you. Um, yes, and Dave, no, thank you very much for inviting us to have this conversation with you, which it is lovely to have an opportunity to really just chat about things in an informal way,
Mm,
um, and see where that goes. So no, it's lovely. So thank you, Dave, and lovely to be with you as well, Jan. Um, introducing myself. So yes, so Rachel Freeth, my name. Now I could have put doctor there before the Rachel Freeth. I'm always a bit self-conscious about that these days.
mm,
But the doctor stands for medical doctor. So I so yes, I although I'm now I work in private practice as a person-centered therapist and supervisor. But before I set up my own practice, I was a psychiatrist for I think I worked for it was over 25 years in the role of a psychiatrist. So having trained originally as a medical doctor, so psychiatrists are medical doctors first and foremost. But the other thing perhaps to say about me or my professional path is that very early on in my psychiatric training, in fact, I'd only just done 2 years of my psychiatric training, I left. I left the profession. I wasn't sure whether I was going to go back. Um, but but I left deliberately to do a person-centered counselling training, which was a full-time course. I did the Norwich
Oh,
at UEA. I did that
mhm.
course, which was full-time for a year. So I left med psychiatry to do that training, and that was a very deliberate. It was very deliberate that I chose the person-centered approach as my counselling training, and it would not have been offered doing anything of a therapy training within the role of a psychiatrist would not have the person-centered approach would not have been on offer. So yes, I trained in a person-centered approach very consciously, very deliberately, um, right at the start of my psychiatric career. As I say, not knowing whether I would go back to it, but I did go back to it after. So I did the counselling, trained as a person-centered counsellor, and then, well, quite frankly, I needed to earn some money. I was still in massive debt after medical school, um, and um, and my original plan was to try and find a part-time job in psychiatry, and then find some counselling work and combine the two. And I did try that, but not very successfully. I found at the time it was just too difficult to work as a part-time psychiatrist. I found it too difficult to work in both professions, basically. Um, so I then really just focused really on psychiatry at that time, and amazingly stuck it out for all those years.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, but to say though that I was very consciously trying to bring the person-centered approach into my work as a psychiatrist, so trying to be a person-centered psychiatrist basically,
yeah,
um, and uh, and then yes, and that led to writing various things and about comparing and contrasting psychiatry and the person-centered approach, and it led to doing workshops and has led to sort of educational stuff. And then so I've kind of straddled these two professions really,
yeah,
but the person-centered approach has always been so foundational really. So it was not that as Jan knows, a lot of people make the assumption that you know, I was a psychiatrist first, and then left psychiatry and became a person-centered therapist or whatever. But it wasn't really the case. I was a
Mm.
person-centered therapist right at the start. It's just I didn't always work in that role. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so yeah, that's my background, and yeah, and I'm very. I think I'm glad that I stuck it out for so long. I don't know. It's a quite difficult question to because it was very costly, but
Mm.
maybe we
Yeah.
can come back to that. So that's quite a long introduction to me. So
Yeah.
um,
Thanks. Well, thank you, Rachel. I suppose just one thing that was coming up for me, and we'll get into all sorts, I'm sure, but are you aware of anyone else who's a trained psychiatrist and person-centered therapist? Like it feels, I mean, I know we met a few years ago, and yeah, it always really struck me that you're really straddling two worlds, and
mm,
I wasn't aware of anyone else
mm,
that was in
mm.
both, and I don't know, I'm just wondering if you were aware of that, of anyone.
Um, I did know one other person um, who well she didn't work in the she was medically trained and had done some psychiatry. She didn't actually work s- her job title was as a psychotherapist, and she was person centered in her way
Mm.
of being, and but she wasn't in a sort of typical psychiatric role.
Mm.
So so no, not apart from her, no, not in the UK, but I
Mm.
do know that there are some people in other countries in Europe, I think, who are.
Yeah.
But no, it's very rare. It's very rare.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah.
yeah, because most psychiatrists with an interest in psychotherapy would train in the psychodynamic,
Mm.
or might be CBT, more behavioural approaches. So
Yeah.
so no, person-centered humanistic approaches. No, you wouldn't get that typically in
Mm.
a psychiatric training.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Rachel.
Hmm.
Jan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I didn't know how well, thank you for inviting me as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an interesting, I've never done something like this before, so it's an interesting thing to do. So thank you for the invitation. Um, and less nerve-wracking because I know Rachel, so that makes
Yeah.
a big difference. And just listening to you, Rachel, I suppose, I don't normally go back as far as this, but it is pertinent, I think. Um, so my background was in desperation, and I found myself at 23 with two small children, a mortgage, and an ex-husband with no support. And the only job I could find that would fit in with the children, because nobody was going to look after them, I wouldn't trust anybody with my children, was a job that would fit in when the children were in bed. I mean, I had done all sorts of jobs like cleaning jobs and things like that. But I responded to an ad to teach guitar. I happened to be able to play and sing, so it was something I did in an evening institute. And from the very start, when I reflect back on everything in my life, I didn't know I was being person-centered in my teaching, but I was
Mm.
being person-centered in that role. And at sometime, if you're ever interested, you can ask me about that interview because it was bonkers and how I ever got a job in education with nothing. I had no qualifications, nothing,
Mm.
aside from the fact that I could play and sing. That was it. And that was what I was going to do. And so I was teaching in adult education quite a long time. And then working when the children went to school, I working in a school for kids with learning difficulties. And I ended up in a department with adolescents with severe behavior. It was called the Department for Severe Behavior and Communication Difficulties. And in that department, we had two groups. We had a group of kids with a diagnosis of autism and a group of kids, and they were non-verbal or echolalic. And the other group of kids were verbal, so they had a diagnosis of schizophrenia or psychosis, because back then there wasn't an autism spectrum. And that was where my education began with those young people. And I realized that and I didn't have the language for person-centered. It's only on reflection that I know that that's who I was in connection with these young people. And it was context, since we're talking about context, was I was kind of embedded in a behavioral system, which I found cruel, callous, inhumane. And I simply, that's where my services as a secret squirrel began, because I would take on board what the psychologists would tell us we had to do. But when no one was around, I communicated with our students, um, I in a human way.
Mm.
And I think that's where those kids, that's why I went and studied psychology, and psychotherapy, and because I had to be able to do something for them. And at the time, of course, nobody, I mean, I'd be in all these meetings, and as a lowly teaching assistant, nobody listens to a word you say.
Mm.
Um, and so, I mean, to be fair, my head of department was very good and did listen to some things and seemed rather sort of, oh my God, this is a radical possibility. And then it would allow me to try this possibility and it would work because it was treating them like human beings.
Mm.
So there were a few things, but that's why I went and studied psychology and psychotherapy, because I wanted to make a difference to their lives.
Mm.
And so I think that was, and so when I went and studied psychology, I picked up on personal power and realized that somebody else, I thought I was alone on the planet. I was this alien who dropped in from somewhere or other, that's how I felt. And I read Carl Rogers and I thought, actually, other people think like me. I just haven't found any of them yet.
Mm.
Um, so that would, yes, that was the start of and I had to get, obviously, I was on my own with two kids and a mortgage. And so when I finished, I had to get a job, and I did so teaching psychology and special needs, um, and and doing my person-centered training. And I had a car crash, and this car crash had me out of work for a year. And it was then it was the best thing that ever happened to me, really, because apart from the PTSD types 1 and 2, at the time it was called, uh,
Right.
apart from all of that, it
Mm.
gave me my life, because I could either get back on the merry-go-round or I could take the chance and launch myself into private practice, which is what I've done. And ever since, it's meant that I can continue to do or be what I feel is right. And because I'm in private practice, if I'm doing training, whatever training I'm doing it the way I feel it needs to be done,
Yeah,
because
it's on
I
your
don't
terms.
have, yeah, yeah. And even when the courses I was teaching were um, validated and accredited by university, somehow I managed to get them to understand how I was approaching it, so that it got their accreditation, but it was incredibly person-centered, including in the assignments and so on that the students had to do. So anyway, that's the very start.
Mm.
But I think I landed on the planet um, feeling like everything was bonkers, and the only way everything was bonkers.
Yeah.
So my way of being, I eventually realized
Mm.
that my way of being actually did have a name. And so reading on personal power, it was the first time I understood how it was that everything seemed so completely bonkers to me,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like a nice moment though, stumbling across it.
it very much was. Yes.
Yeah. I had the same experience with on becoming no, it wasn't on becoming a person. It was the Carl Rogers reader. I I was referred to at university. Um, when you're describing your experience, yeah, a secret squirrel, it almost sounds like really like whimsical, as though you were able internally, you had almost, I don't know, it sounds as though you almost had like a clarity about how you were really going to work, despite what what they say. And I kind of, if that's true, I don't know if that is right, but like, I don't know, it sounds almost, I feel almost envious of the idea because I was a teacher. I trained to be a teacher in
Mm,
primary schools, and I was familiar with Rogers and the person-centered approach. And I think what it created in me was just a real sense of anxiety. That was the overriding feeling for me.
mm,
Um, and I read things about people working in a person-centered way within a school and people being able to kind of mentally, I don't know, compartmentalize or something and just be able to have that certainty within themselves to do something, I guess, quite subversive. And I was never able to do it. It just filled me with anxiety personally. But I don't know, how did you find that, like in schools, the secret squirrel as the
I,
TA?
I think as a TA, obviously, I was part of a team, so there
Mm,
were things that we did,
yeah.
and I would try to, I would try to sort of raise concerns about these behavior mod programs, and I didn't understand how people didn't want to look
Mm,
at what these behaviors we were modifying meant. I just didn't understand. And so I wasn't that confident, but I was driven by something in my soul. So it was a kind of, so when I would be, for example, let me give you one example. One
I,
of our,
I was just asking about what they meant. You were curious about the meaning of it,
yes,
and
the
they were
behavior.
interested in managing it,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
wrong, kind of
They
thing.
didn't need to know. It was like, this is, oh, this is, this is socially unacceptable. One of our young women who had severe learning difficulties, no language, no speech, I mean, her only expression would she would do a very wide grin and she would flap and walk on her heels. And I had come to understand because as a TA, you spend a lot more time with the students, than in fact, some of our teachers spent quite a bit of time in the staff room whilst you were looking after the group.
Yeah.
Anyway, I came to understand that she did that when she was either excited, I could see there was something in the room, and she was going towards it in this sort of way, and I would say, "Oh, you're excited," you see, and she would, because I was, and or she would do this, and I'd say, you're scared, you're scared. It's
Mm,
okay, I'm going to look after you. So stuff like that. What the psychologist did was came in, observed this behavior, said it was socially unacceptable, and I can't even, I think I've repressed what it was we had to do whenever she did it, because this was going to be the program. Every time she did that, we were going to, and I was saying in the meeting, but actually she's expressing herself.
yeah.
And they just weren't interested. I could tell you so many of those. And so one of the things that my secret squirreldom often happens. So, and one of our young men who was 6'2", and I mean, we had this amazing relationship, he and I, despite the fact that he bit me several times. Um, but I was told that we were not to use sentences with him because he didn't understand. We must say sit, stand, no.
Like a dog.
Yeah, exactly like that's exactly how I felt. And I thought, I can't do it. So whenever there was no one else around, I mean, I didn't use long sentences, but I would say something to him. And sometimes I had to, if he was getting a bit high, I would take him for a walk around the edges of the school. A few of the students that I would take, and on the way round, I'd be prattling away about a bird in the tree, or da, 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 da. And he would, I would be responding to how he was looking, and I think somehow I was being the kind of stuff that Gary Prouty writes about. I think I
Mm,
was being that way quite naturally, just because it felt like a connection. Um, So I had those connections with
Were
those.
you, were you aware of like Gary Prouty or anyone at this
No,
point?
no, no.
Was it just like intuitive at the
Oh
time?
yeah, this was intuitive. Well, don't forget, I blagged my way into the teaching in the evening
Yeah, the
class.
training came later, didn't
Yes,
it?
and
Yeah.
this is a TA. It didn't take much to get a job as a TA
Yeah, right.
in a school, So no, no, I had no idea about anything really. It was just my feeling that I
Yeah.
felt, and I could tell you so many stories, but I won't. And so when we're on our own, I would be able to talk with, and and in fact, I had the book that I wrote called Voices of the Voiceless. It was like it had to be written. I had to find a
Mm,
way to tell their stories because nobody was ever going to know. It makes me actually want to weep even now. Nobody was ever going to know what their lives meant. And there was one of our students, and she was a very big girl, in all manner, and she packed a punch. I can tell you, she seriously packed a punch. And I remember once, we were I for some reason I was next to her. I was often next to her because she liked being next to me, but of
mm,
course I would be in the firing line. So, and I started to notice that if someone came into the department, she would that's when she was going to punch somebody. And if it was me, if I was next to her, it would be me or another student or whatever. And one day I just said to her really, really quietly that somebody came in. I said, "Oh, that's whatever her name was. Don't worry, I'm going to look after you." And she looked at me like, and she didn't lash out. And I thought there were two things with her. One was premenstrually, she was much more risky to be around. But somebody new coming into the department. And so if I said to her, "Oh, that's so and so, I'm going to look after you," she didn't do it.
mm.
I tried to get this across to people. She's punching in fear, but also I think she's got premenstrual tension. She never got any ever attention for that.
No.
Um, so I think it was just intuitive. It was just human beings,
Mm.
and I just so it was. So when I wasn't around people who could notice, I
Yeah.
wouldn't just go sit stand. I mean, I just thought it just was
Mm,
awful, and yeah, and so but ultimately, of course, there are other reasons why. The thing to do was to go and get some qualifications so somebody might listen. I'm not saying anything different now. I say the same thing, and people listen.
mm,
It's nothing different. But those were my best teachers in the person-centered approach, really,
mm.
in every way.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm, mm. I really sense your love for them, Jan. Would that be fair to say?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mm,
even now, it makes there are things that I remember. It makes me want to weep, and and things that I remember make me want to laugh because I mean, there were some situations like when Princess Diana. Would you like to hear the Princess Diana story?
If you feel able to share, if
Well,
that's okay.
I think it's quite a useful one.
All right.
Princess Diana and her entourage are
Yeah.
visiting our school. And we, in our department, because we were working with adolescent um, uh, young men and young women,
Yeah.
a great deal of masturbation was going on, as you'd expect.
Right.
I won't go into something even more traumatic that was,
Right. Okay.
but actually, I think it's in my book. I think I did write it in there.
Mm,
Um, but anyway, so this very tall young man who was very good looking, as you know, people with autism don't look like something's wrong. And, he was, very good looking, very tall young man. And just as they were coming into it, and we had panels, glass panels, in the door and so on. So
yeah.
he's coming down the corridor, and there we all were excited, and suddenly looked round, and there he is, trousers round the ankles, having a fantastic time. So we all had to stand across the door like this so that she couldn't see. And she was swept off into another department. We never met her.
Oh no.
That was, I suppose, that was a highlight. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's something about the tension between, I guess, yeah, people who, yeah, may have particular needs that don't fit easily into a system, and I guess there's system logic, and then there's like an individual logic of actually relating to the person in front of you. That's what's coming up for me. I don't know how that sits with anyone. I guess that feels like a theme in general, maybe
Mm,
with
Mm,
mm,
person-centered approach in
mm,
systems. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there, really.
mm. Yeah, I think we try to see people first and foremost, don't we? I think,
Yeah.
and we try to be people first and
mm,
foremost. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's the thing. I mean, I guess I was very conscious in my medical roles that yes, I mean, I had the the doctor in front of my name. I always liked it when people call me by my first name, patients call me by my first name,
mm,
and I would invite it. Some
Yeah.
people preferred not to, but and that's fine. But yeah, I would want to be, uh, yeah, I'd want to present myself as a human being and not stand on my authority, or it was fine that I had expertise, of course, but not to lord that over people, or to or to pretend that I knew best, or all that sort of thing. So I think yes, I think seeing people as people, not as diagnoses, for
mm,
example, or someone who's defined by their learning disability, as in your
Yeah.
case, Jan, and for us to try and be as human, yeah, human, with as much as possible,
Yeah.
as much as possible we can be within our roles, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah. I think I think people can sometimes have a lot of anxiety maybe about the person-centered approach and like the right quote or unquote or wrong way of doing it. But that's fundamentally it, isn't it? It's really about how we approach people and how we hold power.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I was
mm,
thinking in preparation for this about like how I am um in the crisis house that I work at, and I'd never kind of done anything that explicitly person centered that wasn't direct, like just straightforward therapy.
mm,
And so I kind of got into my own head a little bit. I was thinking about this earlier. I remember when I first joined, and I got into my head about like if someone's distressed, sat on the couch in the house in the crisis house that I work at, is it wrong? Is it directive if I ask them if they want to play a game? And I'd really get in my own head about it. And, I think ultimately it's about what serves them. And it's about, I'm not doing it for my own purposes or to look like
mm,
I'm doing something or to tick a box. I'm offering it, but maybe because it might help them. I don't
mm,
know, it might help us relate to each other and get them
mm,
talking and help them feel connected to someone or help them
mm,
get them out of their own heads if that's distressing them and they've expressed that they'd like that. And
mm,
I don't know, I
mm,
I read Barry Grant's article about, is it principled
mm,
non-directivity?
mm,
That really hit me. I only read it recently. Um, and it's really about how we hold power and how we are with the person rather than any kind of, I guess, prescriptive list of specific responses that we are or aren't allowed to do. It's really about being with the person.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That's what's coming up.
mm,
But the anxiety, I don't know, that anxiety, the anxiety about am I doing it right or wrong?
mm.
That feels like a really, I don't know. I think for a lot of people that's quite a common thing, maybe, especially
Yeah.
in in maybe unorthodox environments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if I think naturally enough, that feeling of being, because we're as much a product of these systems as the people
Yeah,
we are supposed to be supporting,
yeah,
and being aware that we're going to be observed, and if we're not doing things the way we're
mm,
supposed to be doing them. And I mean, I'm aware when you were talking about primary school, the squeeze on primary school teachers these
yeah,
days to actually, to spend less time being with, more time doing with and then filling in lots and lots of forms,
Yeah.
it's harder to be, um, what I refer to as secret squirrel. When I was teaching, I was in an FE. It's a very different system in FE. And so I was in a team of psychologists. We were all teaching academic psychology. And nobody cared what I was doing when I was working with my people with learning difficulties. In those groups, I could do what I liked because nobody actually cared. That was the truth of the matter. And as long as I kept them quiet, I mean, we had a fantastic time. But as long as
Yeah,
they
there's
weren't
freedom in
bothering
that, isn't
me.
there?
There
Yeah.
is. But in the teaching A level and GCSE and so forth, there was a syllabus, but I didn't want to do it the way that my team were doing it. That's not,
Mm.
so I actually wanted, and I remember having a teaching practice. Come, they come, they come to assess you, don't they? And so they're watching you. That's why you're nervous. And I remember saying to my group, because the way I used to teach a piece of the syllabus was I'd say, right, we're going to do it like, this is the bit we're going to look at. How would you like to do it? And then I'd break them all up into groups and say, right, who's going to do that bit, that bit, that bit? And then, so this guy came in to assess my teaching skills. He sat at the back of the class, and within 5 minutes, I sat at the back of the class too. And he was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, over to," and because the class were going to teach each other.
Oh
My
yeah.
job really was to heckle them, you see. That's what I did. And that's why we had fun. Because they'd be going, well, we've looked at this piece of theory, diddly 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 diddly, and I'd be going, I don't understand that, and thinking I'm going to be in serious trouble here. But actually, it was okay. The guy doing the assessment
Mm.
was able to tolerate what I was doing. But that was my secret squirreldom there because, in the other, there were four of us and we were all on the same team teaching it. And you're meant to be lecturing.
Mm.
And that wasn't really how I could,
No.
it didn't feel right, but I did had to deliver. And in your job, of course, you had to actually prove, no, so did I actually, who passed their A levels, GCSEs, and so on. But I think it's much tighter in primary school.
Yeah, yeah. I was really surprised how tight it was. I stopped. I decided not to go into teaching about two-thirds of the way through my PGCE when someone was doing some. It was a cess piece of writing. A girl basically wrote a eulogy about her granddad, and that's basically what it was. She
Mm, mm,
died over the weekend, and I kind of said, I don't want to assess this, and I kind of
mm,
wrote in there, I'll come and speak to me if you want to, and I intended on speaking to her just to kind of offer the space to talk, and that
mm,
I wasn't a therapist at this point, but it just felt like the right thing to do,
mm.
and the teacher, because I was a trainee at the time, and the teacher was kind of assessing my assessment, and her immediate feedback for me was that you need to give her a lower grade because she didn't use the apostrophe properly.
Oh,
But the emphasis and when I've written about the, like the stuff I've written about is a bit like trying to understand how that can happen to people because she was a lovely woman. She was really
oh,
lovely. She wasn't. I think she was lacking in empathy maybe in that context, but she's capable of it.
oh,
But I think maybe she's under pressure from above or boxes to tick and so on, and she only saw it in terms of whether or not I'd met the criteria.
mm,
And that was it. I think something clicked in my brain. I was like, I can't do this. This is
oh,
I just can't do it. I mean, when you said secret squirrel, it reminds me. My dad used to call me secret squirrel when I don't know if I just didn't if I went out without telling him where I was when I was a teenager.
mm,
It reminds me of that, and it made me think of like Rachel because like I feel as though you're straddling both worlds, but you're very much not a secret squirrel because you've written books about
mm.
how to do that, and
mm. Well, yes,
or
yes,
you're
I
open
ha
about it.
yes, I think, but actually, m most of what I've written probably has only been read by therapists,
Right.
not psychiatrists, so much, not really so much mental health professionals, and actually, so in my work, really, people weren't really aware what I was doing or trying to do.
Right.
I think a lot of my colleagues noticed that I was, well, I mean, a comment I would have got sometimes is, "Oh, you're a very human doctor." I mean, that's kind of, so people kind of noticed that I was
Yeah.
perhaps a bit different. I didn't. But they didn't really know that I was trying to make a very deliberate, conscious attempt to do my job in a certain way,
Mm.
according to the things that I believed were important.
Yeah.
First and foremost, being the relationship
Mm.
and listening
Yeah.
and really wanting to hear, really wanting to understand how the other person saw their experiences and what sense they made of their experiences and what they thought might be of help, all those sort of things. So, but m most people didn't really see that that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
So my colleagues didn't really, yeah, didn't really know that I was deliberately up to something and trying to be as subversive as I could be
Mm.
within constraints. So yeah, so I suppose I have in some ways I'm sort of out there in the things I wrote, but
Yeah.
not really within my working environment. I don't think I
Yeah.
did. I was brave on a few occasions. So as doctors, we did have to there was always every Wednesday afternoon, I think it was, there was always a teaching session, and most of the doctors who could could well, it was expected that that was the time then doctors were allocated to attend this session, and people would talk on different topics, PowerPoint, all the rest of it. And I did do a couple of presentations on Carl Rogers
Right.
to a room
Yeah.
full of
Mm.
psychiatrists, including consultants all the way, So I did at
Yeah.
times do things that tried to sort of but I mean, talking about Carl Rogers it felt quite risky because most psychiatrists would have heard of Carl Rogers,
Yeah.
but they would think of him as, this just, I don't know, maybe the caricatures really of
Mm.
Mm.
person-centered listening and empathy, really, but really empathy. Yeah, exactly. I remember doing a talk once on empathy, and really trying to show what the person-centered understanding of empathy was, and not the kind of empathy that, well, it isn't really empathy that's taught to doctors. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, the doctors are taught a way of listening to extract information,
Mm.
you know, not to harness a therapeutic potential of an encounter with
Yeah.
somebody with
Yeah.
assessment. So I mean, I did do a few things. So I was probably known to be a little bit different, maybe, but yeah,
Yeah. I found the chapter that you shared with me, when we talked last week, and there's a quote in there. Oh, that it almost honestly it made me really emotional, and I saved it. It says, and it's based on feedback from the crisis service, so the charity. It's not the service that I'm in because it was published before that service started. It says. Yeah, the sentence was, it's a sad indictment of both our society and our mental health system that our visitors and callers experience being attentively listened to as a revelation,
Mm.
although we receive that feedback all too often, and we do now at the service that
Mm.
I'm in. People are blown away at how kind of heard and held they are, and it's not heard so that we can then tell them what to do, or
Mm.
it's not heard so that we can then
yeah,
label them or whatever. And
yeah,
it is a sad indictment. Like, it's really upsetting when I think about it, how kind of how yeah revelatory it is to people to
yeah,
really be
yeah,
heard. And it sounds
yeah.
really hard to for you to do that, I guess, within the constraints of what's demanded of you as well.
Mm.
Um,
You're right, Dave. Yeah, I mean, similarly for me, that it was like occasionally patients might say to me, "Gosh, I really," but particularly if I was discharging them really back to GP,
yeah,
and they'd say things like, "Thank you so much. I feel you really listened to me," or "Thank you so much for not judging me." I mean, it was like they couldn't believe it,
yeah,
that
yeah,
that was so. I mean, God, I mean, that should be just so bloody basic, shouldn't it?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
hmm,
yeah. It's difficult. I try not to get too annoyed at people, though. I guess I want to kind of offer empathy to people and understand systems of
yes,
why
yes,
why people are under pressure and why they
yes,
maybe see
Mm.
things a certain way.
yes.
Because I have this tendency. I think as a teacher, I was quite resentful for a time after leaving teaching, and I kind of just I don't know. I guess quite angry, quite annoyed at people individually, certain people, and I thought I can't. I don't know. Eventually, I realized I want to try and understand it better because
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And then actually, on that, Dave, yeah, I really appreciated your what you wrote on
That
power privilege and controlling the narrative, vested interest in mental health. I mean, because I think you
Mm.
highlighting that we really need to understand that there's vested interest in
mm,
operation here,
mm,
Yeah,
and there's vested interest um, and maybe this yeah, I suppose this links to the thing we're interested in about the context in which we work. Um, that I think, yeah, it is all too easy to condemn people who or yeah, who we think are practicing in ways
yeah,
that but actually, I mean, certainly as far as psychiatry goes, I got less and less critical of psychiatrists as I really understood more and more,
yeah,
one, the vested interest,
mm,
and two, the sheer pressures
yes.
that psychiatrists work
yeah,
under,
absolutely.
and the fear and anxiety around being blamed,
Yeah,
and things like attending coroner's courts
Yes.
when someone takes their own life, and I've attended a coroner court, and the stress of that,
yeah,
um, and also and also the lack of support
Mm,
that individuals have. Supervision is not supervision as us therapists understand supervision. Supervision is it's more managerial, really. It's more it's well,
yeah,
for junior doctors anyway. Consultants don't have supervision yet
mm,
often. So
right.
it's so I think
Yeah,
understanding the realities. I think
yeah,
because I think the person-centered community, you know, uh, um, is guilty of slamming
yeah.
a lot of mental health professionals and
Well,
systems. And I'm not saying that they don't need to be critiqued, but actually we need to understand the bigger picture,
yeah,
the constraints, the vested interests, and we need to understand the system, you
mm,
know.
I think that's the effort with that article was to kind of I found myself getting annoyed at individuals who would come because sometimes we get guests who are generally doing all right relatively, and they can be heightened by interactions and not feeling heard, or being asked loads of questions about what they've been through, and like, do you not know this already? Do I need to go into this? And I mean, someone told me about I'd heard about someone who described herself as trauma informed, and this is like a guest who had been told by someone else previously in another service who and yeah, someone described themselves as trauma informed, and being trauma informed was deciding that you're not broken, it's because of your trauma, and they then go and ask loads of questions about their trauma, like poking the,
mm,
and it's like, this isn't trauma informed at all. This is just asking. Anyway, I can go into a bit of a tailspin, getting irritated at like little anecdotes and stuff. And I mean, that's why when I mentioned the anecdote with the teacher and the apostrophe, I was
Mm,
very quick afterwards to say, no, she's under a lot of pressure. It's not her. Like,
mm,
because I've found myself really, yeah, quite judgmental basically of people who that may behave in a way that and not offering empathy to them, and are trying to understand why they're like that, if that makes sense, or why they need to behave like that. And I think some
mm,
people well, might not be familiar with person-centered approach and other ways of doing it, but I think other people are just under a lot of pressure to tick boxes, and they need to pay the bills.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, what you were saying really gave me an insight into that. I guess psychiatry, or the life of a psychiatrist, is a bit of a mystery to me. And I think in that not knowing, yeah, it's easy to kind of, I don't know, make an assumption or something. But no, that sounds really difficult. It sounds like, yeah, under a lot of pressure and a lot of potential blame maybe if things go wrong.
mm,
Oh, yeah, it's a constant fear,
mm,
actually. Yeah, constant fear, managing risk,
Yeah.
and the anxiety of being criticized, a lot, and that was difficult for me because, uh, yes, I don't think I have a very thick skin, actually. I'm not
mm,
really,
Mm.
um, in many ways, but and the risk of working in a way that the risk of being criticized and alienated by one's peers,
Yeah.
that could be very, very damaging.
mm,
And at the end of the day, I need to I need to feel a sense of belonging, as
yes.
well.
Yeah.
And I can't, and it would be damaging to be alienated by, I mean, I'd be impossible to work being alienated. So yes, so a lot of anxiety around of being criticized, and also yeah, being complained about by patients as well. That's very painful too, when
Yeah.
patients make a complaint about you, and that gets investigated, and I've experienced that as well. Not very much, but
Mm.
it's really, even though I knew I what
Yeah.
I how I worked was easily defendable, but
Mm.
going through a formal complaint process is really painful and stressful.
I feel as though I don't know, maybe it's just my experience, but like almost being person centered, I don't know. I find it. I often try and empathize with the person's point of view of how they experience me like that, and I think I almost do this imaginative exercise of trying to see myself according to them, and I think that makes it so much harder because I can't dismiss what they've said. If that I don't know if that makes sense. Um,
Not sure I understood that, but perhaps could you give that another go?
I've had yeah, in previous jobs I've had like a complaint against me. I think I've put a lot of time into almost imagining their point of view,
Mm.
and yeah, I guess just understanding. I don't know. I'm not sure what I mean. I'm yeah, trying to see myself through their eyes,
Hmm.
which I'm not sure what my point is really. Yeah,
Do you mean, I mean, almost aligning with their point of view, at the detriment of
I think to the
saying,
extent that I mean in the maybe it's just my stuff really, but it's almost like yeah, trying to align with their point of view and understand it to the extent that I'm basically just imagining ways in which I didn't do very well in
mm,
that
Mm.
scenario.
mm,
Or almost
mm,
like if you
mm,
step into their frame of
mm,
reference,
mm,
if someone makes a complaint about me, that is
mm.
inherently valid because everyone's experience is valid in its
Yeah,
own
right,
way.
right, yeah, uh-huh.
It is.
Negating your own something.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, not getting the balance right, perhaps.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't know what sense to make of that really. I was just throwing it out there.
No, I think it's really important what you're saying though there, because I think that happens also in in our practice, in individual practice,
Yeah.
that we're because of that way of being, that we really want to understand what's going on, and if that's something that's is a way of being as opposed to a way of doing, we're naturally going to attempt to understand the other.
Mm,
Mm.
And but the risk is that we understand the other better than we understand ourselves, or we lose ourselves in the understanding of the other.
Mm.
And then I think that's what I'm hearing from you. It's like it's almost like you're so good at actually understanding what the other person's point of view is, that you begin to see yourself more through their eyes than through your own, or something.
Or I don't know if I understand the point of view or I just imagine it what it might be. But
Right.
yes, I kind of put an effort into seeing it through that and lose touch with
mm,
what I was trying to do. This is based on quite a few years ago, and it's mostly relevant when I'm a bit uncertain in my own role.
Mm, mm,
Um, and it's just it's occurred to me that I don't know, being person centered, I don't know. I feel as though in many other roles, or if I wasn't this way inclined, I could just bat it away and be like, get out of here. What a load of
oh
rubbish,
yeah.
and just be like, ah, no. Um, I don't know. Yeah, so there's the anxiety of I don't know,
mm,
some kind of systemic process to go through, but also I don't
mm,
know, a sense of I don't know, having messed up anyway, simply because they saw it like that. That's
Mm, mm,
means something's gone wrong. Um,
I'd be interested, Dave, since you left teaching,
yeah,
and since you sort of moved into working in a person-centered way, within a role as a therapist, and
yeah,
now at Oasis,
yeah.
in the crisis house. What was my question?
Mhm.
Do you feel hmm, do you think, I mean, so obviously your roles now are more explicitly person-centered than you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
be in teaching, but do you feel um hmm, do you feel that your person-centeredness has also kind of more naturally come out, as it were? I'm trying to not quite sure
Yeah.
what I, or do you think it was always there? It was always there before you went into the
Well, I was well, I trained to be a teacher, primary school tutor, I then become a counselling tutor. So I was a person-centered counselling tutor for 4 years as well. So that's the whole thing. Um, I just feel as though I don't know. I feel as though life makes sense. I feel as though like it's. I would say on average, the net kind of impact of working at Oasis is positive for me. Obviously, we deal with a lot of traumatic stuff, and it can have a real impact. But working in a person-centered environment, a system like a service which is person-centered, and I feel it from the management, and they get it, and I've got colleagues, and we see each other and we work together, and it's just so incredibly affirming of I don't know, it just makes sense. I don't know, it just feels like I go to work and I'm not really I am at work, but it is a home, it is a house, and it is kind of feels like a home away from home a lot of the time. I'm not sure if I'm quite answering your question, but
Mm, mm,
it doesn't feel like there's a tension there anymore. And I think the first year or so that I had supervision internally at the service with a colleague, and I think the first year or so I was just talking about how amazing it was to be in a person-centered, I wasn't having to
mm,
hide or explain myself or justify myself to someone
mm.
Mhm.
far removed from what I'm actually doing.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
sure if that quite answers. I don't know if that's
Well,
quite your question.
I'm not sure that my question was particularly clear, Dave. So don't worry. But I mean, but I think it for me it highlights how, yeah, just how the how influential the context is
Mm.
Yeah.
in enabling us to be person centered, and enabling us to develop
Mm.
more
Yeah.
our person centeredness. And I don't know, would you say that's been your experience that you've you've developed person centeredness, or is it more kind of it's
I think it was
able
always
to just
there.
it was
Like
always there?
I
Yes.
think it was always there because before
Yeah.
working at the crisis service, I'd been qualified a few years and I was a person-centered tutor, and that was within a an organisation that wasn't person-centered, but I didn't really engage with the higher levels of management on a regular basis. My job was with the students, and I felt very person-centered in that respect. Um, I feel like I can just be it all the way through now without there
Mm.
being that much tension to hold or having to
Mm,
um, as a tutor at times, I was trying to be as person-centered I could with the people in
mm,
front of me, but then above me and behind me, there was all kinds of tensions and kind of battles I was
Mm.
fighting, and it does at the crisis house. The stress is in front of me. If there's any stress, it's with the people and trying to support them as best I can. It's not kind of almost existential,
mm,
maybe the wrong word, but it's not kind of someone pulling the rug from under me and deciding that I need to do it differently or whatever.
Mm. Mm.
mm,
It's a different kind of, yeah, the stress is in front of me. And the stress is
mm,
where I want it to be, if that makes sense. It arises out of the difficulty of actually doing the work rather than
yeah.
political type tensions.
Mm,
Um, I think I'm as person-centered internally as I ever was, but I'm more congruent, I suppose, just in
mm,
work, certainly.
mm, mm,
Mm.
mm,
And it's a incredible privilege. I talk to people at conferences, and I'm part of the Person-Centered Association community, and I think a lot of people feel really unheard as
Mm.
person-centered practitioners. And I suppose being in a service that deals with really complex stuff, I feel really, yeah, incredibly privileged and to be part of that because I think it's quite rare.
yeah.
I'm just going to close my window. I think someone's
Mm.
taking the bins out. Won't be a sec.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
something
I,
about I'm thinking of the context, whatever the context is. If we're kind of it feels like sorry, I just sort of saw a river. It feels like if we're in the river and we're all flowing and there's then our person-centeredness, as it were, does not pose a threat to anyone. I really am quite conscious of and so reading on personal power when I first read it, it was like, oh my God, that is why I'm a threat. I don't mean to be a threat. I
mm,
don't, I, and the threat that I was being wasn't something I was actually doing, but I think it was that certainly in my early life, there were people who could see that I saw. Does that make sense? Because I couldn't hide that I that I saw. So I wasn't saying, I see what you're doing.
No.
I wasn't saying that, but they could see that I saw. And
Yeah.
in that way,
Mm.
it took me years to figure this out, but I seemed to pose a threat
To
to
people, a certain kind of power.
within, well, it was, I think it's something to do with congruence. And certainly as I came to understand that more, in a so the reason I was talking about a river just then is because it was the flow when you were talking about, because you are in an environment and in a context where other people are in that same flow, then
Mm.
you're able to face whatever's coming your way. And if there's a stone in the river or something, you can go round or over or whatever, because you're all going, there isn't a tension where, oh my
Mhm.
God, this one behind me is doing, and I shouldn't be going this way or that way. It's like you're all in a flow,
Yeah.
is what I was thinking. And one of the things that I think I recognized when I first read that book, because I never really understood. I mean, I never really understood a great deal of things, but why am I such a threat?
Mm.
And part of it is congruence. And if you're in a system where um, where congruence is actually just not, we do not say how we feel about something. We certainly,
Yeah.
doesn't matter how
I,
politely even you might say something that is difficult to say,
mm.
it's also difficult to hear. So, if then congruence becomes a threat.
Is there something about a system not being aware that it's a system? I don't know. That's how I was hearing it. And you're kind of, I don't know. You're,
Yeah, yeah, possibly it's that,
oh,
but I suppose
right.
it's the, I suppose when I think about my practice, or there are times, I'm sure we've all had clients who for whom empathy actually feels too much.
Mm,
It's a
mm,
Yeah.
threat. It's
mm,
very
Yeah.
mm,
threatening because
mm,
it's like, oh my God, I can't.
I've
That's
felt that. I've felt
you
that as a
experienced
client.
it.
Like
Yeah.
the empathy was accurate, but it was like, oh my God, you can see that. No,
Yeah, yeah,
you don't.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
mm,
our empathy needs
mm,
to take into account the fact that the empathy may be too much, and we
mm,
Yeah.
need to sort of rein it in. Well, in the same way, our congruence, depending on or the situation we're in,
Yeah.
um, I'm thinking momentarily of my family of origin, where actually congruence absolutely must not be
mm,
present. It just mustn't.
Mm.
And in any shape or form, because that system has, and I love that family, but that system has survived by not. Um, we don't talk about anything.
Mm.
We don't talk about anything like that. We don't say if we're upset with somebody, or and if we do say we're upset with somebody, it's in hugely, mega blasting, and that doesn't matter how you say it. It's like the fact that you say it
Yeah.
is too much. And so in some systems that, some contexts, it's, or at least this is my, I could be wrong about this, because part of the problem with a system like that is you can't actually ask, is it
Yeah.
like this? Because the mere fact that you're asking is, becomes this very threatening thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't even know why I'm saying this, but I suppose I'm looking at the other side of, I think being person
Yeah.
centered and being with other people who are person centered. It was, I think about this flow, when I'm around, if I'm at the TPCA conference, or I'm around other people who are being person centered themselves.
Yeah.
There's a sort of, there's a ability to breathe more easily,
Mm.
and so on, and being in an environment, um, where that is not the case. I'm aware in myself of a degree of tension, and just okay. So now I've just got to be a bit careful here. I need to.
Mm,
I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but it's about it's that recognition. You know, they call Carl Rogers the quiet revolutionary,
mm, mm,
and I think any of us who embody a person-centered way of being in that. Right, I'll try and make sense of this. Let me give an
I'm
example
following
that's
you.
completely out of context, but I think I have always been a person-centered parent. And as a result, have been on the receiving end of quite a lot of feedback about, how, I mean, some of which has just been, spoiling them.
Mm.
And others have been frankly, quite extreme,
It's something
Um,
about how you hold power undermines how others hold power, or
yeah, maybe that's it. It's sort of,
implicitly.
yeah, something like that. It's like if you're doing it this way,
Mm.
first of all, it's very wrong.
Yeah.
So if I'm trying to well, in fact, I remember somebody
There's-
once telling me, that if I had, and of course we didn't know my oldest had autism, but he had rampant epilepsy. But of course, his epilepsy at the beginning was not very visible. He had his seizures were very, very subtle, frequent, subtle seizures until he started having the much bigger ones. So at that point, I remember being told that if I had actually done the right thing and spanked him more often,
Mm.
he would be better behaved. And I remember thinking, um, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And that, so what I'm saying is it can draw from a system that exists in a certain way, if you're part of that system, and
Yeah.
you're not doing it that way, you're either going to get massive criticism. Well, you get all sorts of projections as well, which is a word we don't use in the
It's,
person-centered approach, but it is. It's,
it's almost it's like it's almost like, yeah, like genuine human connection itself is really subversive because it almost highlights the ways in which
yeah, the
I don't
system.
know. Is that
You know,
right?
the way that we should be doing it is this. Children should be, and I mean, I'm going back a lot of years. I mean, although obviously I'm certainly not old enough to be having a son of 50 next year. I did
Oh.
actually have him when I was 2,
I was going to
obviously.
say, how can you have a child when you're not even born, John?
Exactly. Thank you, David. Thank you. But of course, we are going back to an era where that was very much, what was it? Spare the rod and spoil the child, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And if you weren't doing that, you became a threat,
Yeah.
and an object of judgment and criticism.
Yeah, it's not like a detached kind of, oh, there's another example of how to do it. It's
Yeah,
also, but it's like,
no,
no, this casts what we do in a totally different light. Because if what they do makes sense, then what the hell are we doing?
exactly, exactly. So it's
The
basically
harm it highlights the harm we're doing if we don't have to do it.
exactly.
Like, yeah, some
Yes,
bollocks.
I think that might be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's sort of, but anyway, it's just that certainly in the context, and when we're talking about contexts, I'm really interested in person-centered parenting.
Mm.
That and I've got to tell you, actually, attempting to be a person-centered parent is a very difficult thing because these little ones have ideas,
Mm.
and they're very congruent. And those times when you think, why didn't I start off by saying you do it because I said because
Yeah.
everything's a negotiation,
Mm.
you know. But
I,
but hmm, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, it was just coming up with like being a tutor, being a person-centered tutor, and like people disagreeing with me and being annoyed at me, or yeah, not so much complaining to the college, but like being annoyed at me and
Hmm,
just managing people in general, I guess, as a tutor. So
hmm.
being person-centered, I've also got to empathize with them. I can't just I don't know, like if I was like an IT manager or something, I could just go, right, da, 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 da. But it's a bit like what I was saying earlier. You've got to kind of step into their frame of reference and understand. I don't know. It makes everything a lot more complicated.
It
You,
does. Yes.
if you had no sense of people's humanity, they'd be a lot easier to manage.
But that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah,
You see, the thing, I think the thing about this thing that worries me a lot is the dilution of the person-centered approach and the misunderstandings and caricatures, misrepresentations of the person-centered
Mm,
approach,
mm,
as though it's something we can just pop on when we go into the therapy room and pop off
yeah,
when we come out. And for me, I mean, I've been at it a long time, and it's never stopped being really hard work to
yeah,
really try and engage in somebody else's
mm,
world and to and as a way of being, which it is a way of being, it's not something where, yes, I've got that technique now, I can just pop that on and do that when I go to work and then come home. It isn't like that.
no.
And
I,
yeah,
yeah.
I was
I was
saying
go
that for a reason. I've forgotten what it was.
A dilution of the approach.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I was going to ask you, Rachel. I think when you asked me about if I feel more person-centered now, I guess I was curious to ask you the same thing. Like
Ah,
since now yeah,
oh,
you've left working as a psychiatrist. I don't know.
ooh, that's a good question, Dave. Gosh.
Was your question?
Um, um, oh, that's I don't know that I feel daring enough to try and answer that off the top of my head, really.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I don't think so, actually.
the
Um,
reason I asked is I thought it might be more relevant to
I,
you. You were
well,
holding both a lot more than
yeah. Would you know? I think I'm probably much more self-critical now. I
right.
mean, because I suppose at least when I was working in the psychiatry, I was aware of the limitations and the constraints, and
Yeah.
so although it was
God, yeah, that's so
I was aware that
yeah,
I was not able to operate. So I kind of, and I'm not saying I was certainly very self-critical of myself
yeah,
then. I mean, I am self-critical.
reflective. Right. Yeah.
But I think I could, or I don't know, it was perhaps easier to forgive myself because of it was just I just knew it was impossible
You
to
had to be
really.
pragmatic, didn't you? I
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Whereas I think now, as working as a person-centered therapist and supervisor, I think I'm probably a lot more self-critical and self-judgmental as to, ooh, yeah. I mean, gosh, yeah.
Thoughts of it
I
like
mean,
that.
it did. It's but in other ways, now there is so much more freedom to really listen to people. So I think in that, so I am, I think, uh, yes. That's a really hard question to answer. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna go away and think about that. Think about that day. I've got the freedom to be more person-centered, but
Yeah.
whether I am more or not, I really don't know. I couldn't say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm.
yeah, gosh. Do you know what came up for me a bit earlier as well? When you were talking about person-centered parenting, Jan, and Dave, you were talking about being a tutor. And okay, it's basically it comes to the issue of sort of power, but I was thinking
Mhm.
it's how difficult it is when we're actually in a role of authority.
Mm.
And obviously, me as a psychiatrist was a role of authority. So I think when we're in a role that carries authority, and we're expected to um, we're expected to use our authority. I think that's when it's really difficult. So
Mm.
what does person-centered authority look like? Or or actually is that a contradiction in terms? Um, but well, what do we mean by authority, I suppose?
Mhm.
Um, that
Yeah.
was one thing that came up for me. And the other thing that's around for me actually, talking about power, is I know that within the approach there's an awful lot of I mean, the whole issue of power and expertise it's a very alive, isn't it? It's a very sort of fundamental area of concern in our approach. But I know that a lot of people, it's easy to get lambasted for having power. But actually, I'm beginning to appreciate a lot more that I don't think the issue is around power. It's about control.
Yeah.
And I don't think in the approach, I think we're too easy to criticize power. I'm
Yeah.
not sure that we should be criticizing power so much as we should be criticizing control and
Yeah.
coercion. That's so I just think
Really good point.
I've just been thinking a bit more about that.
Yeah.
And
It's an important
the,
distinction, isn't it,
it
between
is
power
it,
and control?
it is
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is it is, and I think I think we're a little bit. There's a lot of sweeping statements go on, I think, within the
Absolutely.
approach around power.
Mm,
But you know, I'm I'm reading I'm reading a book. I'm reading something by Paul Tillich, who's yeah, theologian really, actually, and a very famous book, quite an old book called Love and Power,
mhm,
or Power and Love, the Love
I've,
and Power, I think. But I think but I don't think it was him that's, I don't know if it was him that said this, but somebody else said it, that love without power is anemic and
mm,
wishy-washy and sentimental. So and of course power without love is tyrannical and destructive.
mm.
So,
yeah,
I just think I think we need to think more about power. It's control that we should be,
Yes.
yeah,
that's
yeah.
you know.
I've heard. I've got a friend who maybe she read that book. She's kind of quoted that before. Um, I've never thought of that distinction between power and control, because obviously you can have loads of power,
Mm.
but
Yeah,
it's what you do with it and how you
yeah,
hold.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean,
the
I think
control is
that's
the problematic
crucial.
element, isn't it?
Mm.
Mhm.
And we do have power. I think
Yeah,
to I mean that's something I'm certainly in my teaching roles and things like that. I'm always trying to give away power.
Mm,
Um, and in my therapy and all of that. But I do have power. I mean, with a supervisee, I have the power. If that supervisee is doing something that is dangerous, if I don't step into my power, I'm not doing my job properly.
mm,
You know, but it is about I think that distinction of power and control. Because one of the things in the person-centered approach, and this is coming back to something you said earlier, David, is and I see this in supervisees, especially trainees, is they're so busy trying to empower the client that they disempower themselves. And actually that's not what we're, the equalizing of power is really what we're aiming for, isn't it?
yeah.
In a
What?
person-centered way of being.
How do they disempower themselves? What do you? What's your
Well, I've done it myself. I mean,
right?
I recall having a client who my supervisor at the time was saying, this is getting abusive.
Right. Yeah.
You need to do, and I was saying, I'm person-centered, I must accept all things, and
It's,
it must be all, and actually I
yeah.
was disempowering myself.
A bit like what I said about complaints and
Yes,
yeah,
yes, exactly that. And
yeah,
that there is, I think, that if yeah, there is something about how can we be, how can we grow into or accept our power? I sometimes think of Spider-Man. With great
right.
power comes
Yeah.
great responsibility. So, the thing is, if we do but that's distinction you've made, Rachel, is the crucial one.
Yeah.
It's, if we have power, of course I had power over my children when they were babies and young children, and fairly quickly they had a
mm,
lot of power over me. But of course I had power. The question is, how do we use that
mm,
power?
I think
mm,
one thing that comes up for me about power as well is I shared this on like an email group recently. Um, you don't notice it as much when you've got it. Like when I was a trainee, I think without realizing it, or I was a bit aware of it, I was kind of often kind of paying attention to my tutor, basically, not just like listening to the theory type stuff, but also picking up on, I guess, their attitudes or their thoughts about different things,
Mm,
and playing, bearing it in mind, because I don't want to kind of I want to I would need a good relationship with my tutor really, and I was a bit hypervigilance isn't the right word, but like I was attentive, and yeah, as a tutor, I was thinking, I want to create a space where people don't do that. I want to really want them to be congruent and able to kind of really bring themselves all the different feelings, and I thought I was doing it, and then at the end of I think level 3 course or something, we went to have some pizza or something in a like a local little pizza place. We'd kind of celebrated the end of the course, and everyone was chatting away. And I can't remember. I wanted to respond to someone, and I started talking, and everyone just stopped what they were doing, talking wise, and tuned to me to listen to me. And I was just like,
yeah,
oh shit,
yeah.
it's exactly the same. Like they are tuned into me in the same way I was.
Mm,
I don't know. That was a big moment for me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is avoidable. There's an element of power and the impact that might be
mm,
just there, and
mm,
all we can do is be aware of it and
mm,
transparent about it.
mm.
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and responsible. I
Yeah.
think that's crucial. I'm just aware of time, and you know
I
what?
was just going to
I
say,
could
I've got,
canter on all evening. This is such a great conversation, but I'm thinking it might
we
be.
said half past there, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Are we left with anything? Does anyone want to, I don't know, are we left with anything that we want to
Mm.
kind of share that you want to get out there before we finish?
I think the only thing that the one thing I'm left with is that I do feel some sort of wish to support person-centered practitioners
Mm,
Yeah.
in working in non-person centered organizations, and and to think about
mm,
what people need in order to do that,
Mm.
in order to work in non-person centered order. So that could be another
yeah,
conversation that I think sort of for me flows on from that.
mm,
Yeah.
Because we need to we
Yeah.
do need people to be out there. I mean, I'm glad I've stepped out of it now, but
Mm.
I wouldn't criticize anybody for not wanting to go in it in the first place.
mm,
But there are people that are in it in non-person
Yeah.
centered and do want to try and make a difference. And I just think, how can we support
mm,
what's needed? What's needed
Yeah.
to for people to do that? So that's kind of what I'm left with.
mm.
Yeah.
I'm
There's a,
completely with
sorry.
you on that one. And sorry, just as
Yeah.
I'm totally with you on that. But also the I think this where we've now got to. It feels like I mean I've thoroughly enjoyed this
Mm,
conversation,
Yeah,
but
me
we've
too.
come to a bit where it's like oh my goodness, here's a launch pad. We could go on for a long time talking about
Yeah.
power and control and all of that kind of thing. It feels like that's another conversation that
Yeah.
would be really interesting to have. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do it again. I felt a bit self-conscious at first when we started recording, but then I think once we sank into it, I don't know. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it as well.
I forgot we were recording.
That's the best way sometimes, I think. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good, interesting topic maybe to carry on with if we want to do this again at some point.
Mm,
When you were saying, Rachel, I guess one thing that was occurring to me is that at the Person-Centered Association, there's a lot of special interest groups. There's a theory one, there's a uh, yeah, ones for well, all kinds of different things, and almost something like being person-centered in non-person-centered organizations or something like that. It could be quite niche, but I think for the people that it applies to,
mm.
Mm,
No,
maybe
that's
they
good.
really benefit from that.
That's a good thought, Dave. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I might
yeah,
float that to people and see if there's any interest.
yeah. That's a good thought.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. Right.
yeah. Oh well, thanks, Dave. Did you have any final thoughts you
No,
wanted
I don't
to
think so. No, I think I'm tired now. I think I'm just going to go and sit down for a bit.
put your head in a
Um,
cold, put your head in a bucket of cold water? No.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Okay, yeah. Happy to leave it there then.
All right.